I'm Kylie, this is my colleague Alicia, and we are here with Kim Jungman this morning. Thanks so much, Kim, for being with us today.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here with you guys. It's really exciting. It's been a fun weekend, and it's just been incredible to be able to share my passion and my knowledge with people and really just get to connect and keep networking and share that love of horses.
Absolutely. You know, we were reflecting on our first chance of chatting with you. We got a chance to touch base with you over Zoom, and we were really impressed by just the variety of things you've done. There's, you know, so many different disciplines and things you've dabbled in, and which I'm sure have really shaped how you view horsemanship. So I would love to know, how does the foundation of horsemanship transfer between disciplines?
Oh, that is a topic I could talk about all day long. I'm going to try and keep it short here for the sake of our time frame, but I really am passionate about multidiscipline and what that means to everybody. With horses, I have that multi-background discipline of dressage, jumping, western, vaulting, therapeutic, equine-assisted learning, all those different aspects. It really has solidified in me that no matter what we're riding, whether we're doing competitive, whether we're doing recreation, our horses need to be versatile, and we need to be both mentally and physically training them, as well as ourselves, to have that well-rounded, harmonious partnership. So when I think about cross-training, or I think about that foundation, it really is about building a variety of skills within that horse set. And that skill set, it doesn't matter what discipline you're using. Every horse needs to have dressage. Dressage is just training. It's that physical strengthening of the muscles. It's about developing the straightness, fixing the asymmetries of the horse, and also starting to really identify those soft aids, identifying that more harmonious, light contact, going into working towards that self-carriage, whether that's low-level self-carriage, which is basically, you know, you ask your horse to hold a position and it's up to them to hold it. We're not micromanaging that and helping them.
For sure.
But they're responsible for that. And then obviously as we're developing up the levels, then self-carriage becomes more of a harder collection state. But self-carriage really is just about the horse's responsibility and willingness to do what we're doing and the physical capability of doing that. Yeah. So your foundations, every horse, every rider should have a foundation in jumping. Jumping is just an incredible, again, it's a strengthening tool, but it also really builds confidence in the horse and rider, and it builds a lot of focus. It teaches you to start thinking ahead instead of just focusing on what you're doing in the moment, which a lot of us as humans, we can get really caught up in that moment of, oh, our horse is doing this, and we're looking down, you know, at those ears and down at what the horse is doing, instead of focusing and preparing them for what needs to come next so that they can physically and mentally be ready, and we're not just telling them in the moment, right? Every horse should be able to do rollbacks. I don't care if you're a dressage rider, a jumping rider, I don't care if you're just out on the trail. Every horse should know how to do a rollback. Sits them on their hind end. We're starting to create some anaerobic strengthening. We're starting to create getting into that high intensity interval training versus your stamina training or your endurance training, right? Playing around with all those different levels, that foundation is what's going to build a successful horse and rider to succeed in whatever performance level or sport that they're wanting to focus on. So for myself...
Exhibitors are looking for the owners of a gray Ford F-150, Alberta license CPX 2294, Charlie Papa X-ray 2294, and the owner of a black Chevy Trax, Alberta license CHG 6692, Charlie Hotel Golf 692. You are blocking the entrance to the sand ring outside. Could you please move your vehicles, or we will have to tow them? Thank you.
Duly noted. For myself, as somebody who really has been specializing with working equitation for a number of years, the one thing I love about that sport is it is multidiscipline and it's multi-level, but it's also, you're combining all breeds. And it is such a demanding sport because we do have our dressage training, But we also have our ease of handling, which is that dressage with the versatility and the endurance of having to perform those obstacles and changing turns and doing tight turns, but still creating self-carriage, maintaining the rhythm, maintaining all those things. And then we have the speed round, where we are getting into that high interval stamina and sprinting, and you're going from a canter back to a halt and then back to a canter or back to a hand gallop, and still doing those tight turns and maintaining that dressage for up to 2 minutes in that ring. So having that versatility and that foundation, working equitation, I think, is one of the ways that really shows how important it is. It doesn't matter what you're riding. And I've had conversations with people where, I've had previous clinic riders that have ridden with me a couple years ago. There's one cowboy in particular that came up to me this weekend, and he said, I started doing this dressage stuff in working equitation, and we were out cutting the other day, and my horse, he sat down and he did that turn, and he was able to balance and go after that cow, and the other guys were like, whoa, your horse never used to do that. And he was like, that's the dressage.
That's awesome. I love that, and that idea that versatility and adaptability makes you a more well-rounded athlete, both as a rider and for your horse as well. Amazing.
I once had a teacher that said exactly what you're saying, that dressage is the basis of everything. And yeah, it just seems to ring true in what you're saying, but that's a great example. Yeah. So Kim, we know that you are multifaceted. You have many certifications as well. One of particular interest, just because we didn't know a lot about it, we had both heard of it, but thought others might be interested too in hearing you expand a little bit, that you're a teacher in training for École de Guerre. Can you please say it?
So close.
So close.
Excellent. Yes, please.
Kudos to that try. It is tough. Good old French. École de légèreté.
There we go. I wasn't going to get that.
Parle de français. Oui. So École de légèreté is a form of French classical dressage based on a French classical dressage master, which is Philippe Carl. I've been studying classical dressage for a number of years, reason being that this is really where our foundation of horsemanship came from years ago, right? Whether you're a bridle horse, whether you're dressage, whatever you're doing, all these concepts came back from years and years ago. And some of that, unfortunately, is getting lost in translation a little bit today. So I spent quite a bit of time really studying over the last few years of trying to get back into some of that classical stuff and understanding more about how we can better communicate in lightness with our horse while still preparing them. So École de légèreté is a French international school of classical dressage that I was really fortunate to be able to join a couple years ago. And I started off just in a clinic as a rider, checking it out and kind of getting some feedback from my horse. At the time, he was 4-year-old Lusitano stallion. And he was a handful. He was a lot. He's that high energy, anxiety kind of stallion. And so we started together, and he just melted underneath me. I never felt that lightness before in him, and he was so happy. So from there, I was really fortunate, actually. I had talked to Melanie Bowman, who was the instructor at the time, and they were having a teacher's course here in Alberta, and I somehow lucked out, and somebody had stepped out of it, and I was able to get into that position. And so for the last 4 years, I've been studying École de légèreté, both in person and through online studies, to try and progress that knowledge and bring some of that classical training back and share that. And that really is a huge part of the foundation of my training and coaching today and how that adapts. And again, it's dressage, but it's focused on the horse and the rider. Again, we don't care what you're riding. It's just about building that foundation.
I really appreciate the way that you said that. It tells us a lot about you that you said, I thought I would try it and see how my horse liked it.
Yes. And the horse let you know that it was
Yes.
like right what he needed.
Oh yeah, he was so happy.
Yeah. That proof in the pudding really speaks to like speaking on their level, setting them up for success, and it makes me think of the kind of like a horse-centered approach to being able to work with them.
Well, and sometimes we get into such a box, right, where we have, okay, we've learned this, and everybody does this, and everybody does this, and everybody does this. And this was a really difficult stallion. He was not that stallion that you could discipline. He was that Lusitano stallion that you had to work with his mind, and you had to work with his feet. Yes. And so you had to really figure out with him how to get his attention and be able to move those feet in a way that he felt he had a say. Right? It was very important for him that he was a partner in this and he wasn't being told what to do. And that was that bridge.
Yeah, it makes me think of how I've heard from some folks in the industry that sometimes the mares are harder to work with than the geldings because nothing's been taken from them hormonally because they have all their reproductive organs intact, and it just makes me think of with the stallion too. Like there's something that's a little more challenging sometimes with them because that sense of belief that this is what I feel and this is what's important to me is just so pure and real. So it really makes me think you have to really earn them and do that in a partnership.
You do, yeah, and there's that sense of survival in them, right?
That
where
too.
Those hormones really do make a difference, and it's up to us to really start to listen to them and not label them as, oh, you're difficult, you're bad, but it's up to us to grow and figure out how to better work with that mindset.
Absolutely. Well, and every trait can have its pro and its con. It might seem difficult in a moment, but that beauty when it turns into self-carriage and partnership is kind of unparalleled in its own way. Hey?
Oh, it's incredible, and they become so loyal to you as well once you get there.
That's amazing. So jumping off of this idea, kind of like earning the horse, I would love to ask you about what is your favorite breed of horse and why?
You know, this is one we reflected on the other day, and I can honestly say, well, if I had to choose a breed, I absolutely do love the Lusitanos for their mind, for their versatility. But realistically, for me, I don't have a specific breed. I have a type of horse that I really love, and that can be any breed. It really is about physically, I have a specific thing I'm looking for. I like to see bone structure. I like to see a good solid foot underneath them. I like them to have that shorter back with the more square build and that deep set neck that gives them that athleticism, which is similar to that Lusitano breed, but you'll also find it in a lot of other breeds like your Canadians, your Morgans. But I mean, any horse can be built that way too with the right breeding. I love crossbreds, especially draft crosses. But then my other component of it is the personality side. I love horses that are expressive. I do have a tendency to pick the really difficult ones because they make me grow as well. And I like them to have that ability that they feel free, that they can express themselves, and obviously in a safe manner. But I do really encourage horses to be able to reach out and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, or you know what, I'm feeling a little fresh today. And so that we can adapt and work with them so that they're always staying happy. But yeah, in terms of overall type, it's really about, there is a physical combination with that athleticism and that drive to want to succeed, but they have to have the personality mindset to go with it.
Yeah. You don't want, to have athleticism without the mind gets a bit scary, and to have mind without athleticism might be a bit limiting. So that that combination is where you're looking at. That makes a lot of sense.
I think it's also interesting when you say I like expressive horses, and then you said I also tend to like horses that can be difficult, and I find a lot of times those things go hand in hand.
Oh yeah, right. They do, right? They make us think outside the box. They're the ones that make us grow, because A, B, and C that everybody uses doesn't always fit every horse, and that's what I love, I guess, about training and about coaching, truthfully, is and that's why I love doing clinics, is because I come in, I don't necessarily know any background, and I've got X amount of time, but I get to sit there and really analyze and go, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Now, what is the most important pieces that I can truly make an impact on to give you the confidence and the skills to really start improving in the future? And that's why I love these difficult horses too, whether it's just more athletic, difficult personalities, or it's horses that have had some traumatic events in the past and we're working through rebuilding that confidence. Those horses too I have a major soft spot for, because I really like building confidence and starting to teach them to reconnect and trust and to have that self-belief in themselves, right? So I play around with all my different training styles, right down to positive reinforcement and clicker training, depending on the horse and how that can be versatile and adaptability to each individual.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that. You just mentioned clicker training. Like, what would be an example where you would use that in your program?
So I came across clicker training actually with my stallion. When he was young, he was super athletic, he's extremely smart, and he was too young to be riding, so he needed a job. He needed something to think about and use that brain. And so we started playing around with some trick training just to give him some mental stimulation. And I started playing around with understanding more about positive reinforcement. And I'd always used bridge signals just as like a verbal reward and then a pat kind of thing, but I'd never really gotten into the clicker side too much. But it opened a door to training that I, to this day, use all the time. And so one of the main areas I do it in is if I have a horse that's lacking confidence, whether that horse is just fearful of the environment, fearful of people, or maybe it's just objects or whatever it is, one of the very first things I do with those horses is I target train them. So I have a little jumping bat that I glued a pool noodle chunk onto the end of, and that's our target. And what we do is I just take that target up and I put it in front of them and I say touch. And when they bump it with their nose, I say good and I give them a treat. Very quickly, we have them touching that target all over the place. It's not about touching the target and teaching that trick. It's about the word touch. It's building self-confidence and having them reflect back onto me in a moment of fear. So then what we do is we take that bridge signal and now we start expanding it to, okay, you're afraid of that obstacle over there. Touch. And they will go and touch it and they'll get their reward. So what we've done is we've done two things. First, we've got them to engage back with us, to check back in mentally so that they're not way out here and disengaged. The second thing is we've fostered curiosity. Yeah. And that curiosity is now building confidence in that horse to be able to believe that they can go up and face these objects. Another place I use it is we expand on that, and actually I do this with every horse I start. Every ride, the very first ride I get on those horses, it's always bareback, and it's usually with a halter. And first thing I do is I'll slip onto their back, and I'll hold out a treat, and I'll say touch, and I'll give them that treat. Some people shy away from this idea of me giving treats, and I phase it out very, very quickly. But what it does is any moment that things start to get high anxiety on that horse going forward in the future, all I have to do is put my hand out, and they're mentally right back on me. And so suddenly, whatever they were starting to panic about, it doesn't matter because I'm here.
You've built in a reset button.
Exactly. And we can also later bridge that to a word here that I use a lot, which is, you know, you're starting to disassociate because something's going on. I'm not going to stop riding. I'm not going to put my hand out, but I'm going to say here, and they're going to flick that ear back and go, oh yeah, you're still here, right? It's just that little check-in of being able to build confidence and that partnership.
Right. I just think of, like, when you said here, it's like I'm with you. Like here,
Exactly.
I'm still with you. Like especially for them, because they can't see us when we're on their backs in the same way as if we're on the ground doing the groundwork. That like vocal reset. That it almost makes me think of like it's almost a way of teaching them grounding.
Yeah.
I think of that idea of like come back to me.
That's
Come
exactly it. Yeah, we're just using that little verbal clue to say, you know what, we got you, trust us. And you'll see that a lot. Horses that are riding out alone. You know, I've heard a lot of people, either they're herd sour, they don't want to go out alone, so we use that there. We'll distance a little bit farther and we'll give them that here, reward. Okay, now we can turn around and go home because you checked in. Another place is you hear a lot of horses that riders will go out, they'll be riding alone, oh, my horse is okay, but then a deer comes up, and then my horse they can't come back. So it's that same thing. Here, I'm okay, it's all right. And then we can continue on because they've rechecked in.
Right. Absolutely. You know, even as we're kind of discussing, you know, I use the word grounding, which is typically a word we use in kind of human spaces with psychology, but it just makes sense. And I know that you do the equine facilitated learning stuff as well. That's something that I spend a fair bit of time with as well. And so I would love to hear, you know, you mentioned sometimes you're helping horses overcome trauma. You're drawn to some of the more challenging horses. Yep. As you help horses work through tough stuff, maybe overcoming trauma and stuff, like, do you notice any parallels between how the horses heal and how people heal?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I always joke, being a therapeutic coach, there is not a person that can come to me who doesn't get therapy. And it's not even intentional. It's, you know, we all have our things going on, whether that's self-belief, whether it's a doubt, it's a fear, or even sometimes it might be more ego or just a little bit of, you know, thinking reminding ourselves we need to be a little bit more humble, because horses sure do that to us. Yeah. But yeah, there's so many parallels, right? And one of the things that I really focus on is by teaching the riders how to understand what their horse needs from them, whether that's physical balance, whether that's some emotional regulation and assistance with self-regulation of that horse. The riders suddenly completely evolve as well as they start focusing on the perspective of helping that horse. Us as riders, a good example is as a therapeutic instructor, I'm pretty picky on equitation and positioning and how you're using your body, as well as that classical dressage background. So I don't often pick on riders and say, okay, you need to sit up more, you need to put the shoulder here. I'll do it at times, but realistically how I do it is, okay, your horse's shoulder is dropping through this turn. We need to, you know, use your snaffle on the inside corner of the mouth by lifting your rein, turning your body to help improve the horse's shoulder and balance through that turn. And as we do that, the person, while focusing so much on helping their horse, they have completely just changed their body, right? Because we've put them in that position without them thinking about it. And one of the fun parts that I didn't mention to you guys is I'm actually a hypnotherapist as well. And I took that not to hypnotize people.
Yeah, clarify. What does that mean for you? Yeah.
So hypnotherapy, the reason I took it is, as a coach, I wanted to better understand the conscious versus subconscious brain, because I work with a lot of people, and whether this is just because I notice it more or it's because they're kind of drawn to me, but I work with a lot of people with anxiety, fears, that kind of thing, and a lot of self-doubt. And I really wanted to understand more of the conscious versus the subconscious brain and how to work through that and start to help them. So I did take hypnotherapy to better understand how to get through that subconscious and start putting some of that stuff into autopilots, because a lot of us are overthinkers and we're micromanagers. And so we have to learn to teach our brain to focus on what the horse needs from us. And I said throughout this weekend, there's really only two things that horse needs. One is we need to focus on where we're going so that that horse can know ahead of time where we're going. And the second thing is to balance that horse. Once we have those two pieces, the rest will fall into place because that horse can do their job and we're staying out of their way, right? So I joke around all the time that quite a few people that ride with me, they're like, would you stop hypnotizing me? How did I do that? And I'm not actually hypnotizing, but I do play around with neuro-linguistic programming and the theory of flooding, which is how we hypnotize, but not in the scary sense of flooding, but just organizing your brain's thoughts by keeping your body busy enough that your brain starts focusing on the correct patterns of thought. So we play around a little bit there, and it's super fun.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like mindfulness on steroids. Like
basically.
It's not just
So interesting.
I know. Yes, there's so many pieces to that I.
Wow, Kim.
I know.
Already thought that you were like diversified, and it's just blowing my mind.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I think too, in horsemanship, we never want to discourage a horse's try, and I think the same goes for working with people and students.
Absolutely.
That overthinking energy often comes because you're trying so hard that sometimes you're actually making it harder for yourself. So then, what are the valuable tools to help get out of our own way? Because a lot of times that try in a person, that's a beautiful thing, but how do we shape that into something that's going to bring a result that's more effective? I just love that idea of bringing that tool.
And empowering people, right? We need to really empower people to believe in themselves and always meeting their horse in the moment, right? We all have goals and we all have dreams and aspirations, especially in the competitive world. It can be really easy to get caught up in what our competitive goals are, but at the end of the day, we have to meet ourselves and our horses in the moment and adapt to what that needs. And as long as we're focusing on that partnership together and how we can best help each other, you're gonna have successful days all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kim, we are nearing the end of our time, but I do have one more question that I would like to ask you. You seem like a very busy woman, and a lot of what you're doing takes a lot of mental focus as well as physical. I was just wondering, how do you keep your energy up? And how do you, when you feel maybe discouraged or unfocused, overwhelmed, how do you keep going?
I love that question. First, I am fortunate that I've been able to create this career and lifestyle that I truly am passionate about. I have always been very, very passionate about helping horses and people, and I find a very strong regeneration in myself in being able to do that. So when I am feeling down or discouraged, one of the biggest things I truthfully do is I get out there and I start helping other people again. I do a ton of volunteer work because I really enjoy spreading this, and I do give a lot away for free. If you come and talk to me in my booth, you're going to hear training advice for free all the time based on questions I get asked, and it's because, you know, we always are looking for knowledge. In today's world, it can be hard to come by without the big price tag and without the time frames associated with it. And I guess growing up, I didn't have the luxury of being able to, you know, be involved in a lot of lessons and that kinds of things. A lot of what I grew up with is self-taught based on books and just experimenting and watching things. And so I really try and give that back, and through that I get very empowered and inspired myself in helping other people succeed. The other thing is spending time with my own horses and just reminding myself that, you know, I do self-assess. I sit there and I go, okay, this is where I came from. And even on the down days, it's like, you know what, there's always positives. And we just have to find those. And some days it's a little bit hard, especially on, you know, when you do have, because I do compete. So those competition days, you're kind of beating yourself up sometimes. And then you got to sit back and go, but you know what? Look at where we came from, and look at the brights we did have. And at the end of the day, do I have that partnership with my horse? And I do. So there's a lot there. The last piece is self-care, and whatever that looks like for yourself. For me, one of the biggest self-cares I actually have is continuing my education. I really, really enjoy learning. So I'm one of those people that when I'm feeling a little burnt out, I actually will sit down and I'll find a new book or find somebody new to study some stuff from, and I'll keep expanding that knowledge, and through that I'll find that there's that drive again, and it's like, hey, I got new things to apply, let's go play.
I love that, and totally
too.
identify with that.
I was going to say I resonate with that very
Yeah.
strongly. That reset of like, okay, like almost like similarly to what you were saying about the horse too. The horse needs to know where we're going.
Yep.
And I think for us too, this idea of like when we pursue other education endeavors, it gives us a new thing to put our eyes on for where we're going.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, amazing.
And sometimes when you get so busy, it's like you get in survival mode, so you're just doing the things you have to do. And that feels like a faraway luxury, like just being able to pursue education or read a book. But when you get to do it, it feels like such a treat. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, our time with you has flown by as I expected that it would. So thank you so much for being here with us. And
Yes,
before we
thank
let
you.
you go, if people are interested in more in connecting with you, either here at the Expo or beyond, can you give us a little more information about how they can find you?
Absolutely. So I do have a website. It's pureharmonyequine.com, as well as I am on Facebook, both as Kim Jungman, as well as my business page, Pure Harmony Equine. I am always happy to visit and discuss. We have our booth here today, so please stop by. I would love to visit and discuss some more. We have our clinic today at 5 or 6. 4 o'clock. There we go.
4 o'clock, yeah. What's the focus of that clinic going to be?
The focus of today's clinic, we're doing working equitation again. So today we're doing a little bit more ease of handling, and then we're getting into the speed round and talking about how that's going to affect our horses and our training.
Exciting.
So awesome. Well, thank you again for being here with us today. We really appreciate your time and your insights.
Thank you guys so much. Such an honor, and it's been great.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We've got one more Horseman's Hot Seat with Trevor Mertes later, and then we will be heading over and enjoying the rest of the expo. So we hope to catch you later, and thanks for joining us.